Hello, hello. I'm Tanya Dalton, owner of Inkwell Press and host of Productivity Paradox. I want to talk to you about 5 ways to quiet your inner critic. Before I do, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. To really understand how to quiet our inner critic, we need to understand where it lives in our brain. You see, your inner critic is really a very important part of how your brain works. The chemical that triggers the inner critic to start talking in your head is really tied to that threat protection system in your brain. And this is an adrenaline-fueled system. It is part of our fight or flight system. So it keeps us safe. It enables us to learn from our mistakes. But here's the problem. Sometimes it can go a little bit awry and it can start taking over everywhere. And what fMRI studies have found is that sometimes the inner critic is triggered when there's no external threat. It's just us, quite frankly, criticizing ourselves and going over and over again about our faults. So when left unchecked, your inner critic creates this mental pattern of negative inner comments. And this undermines your health, it destroys your creativity and your spontaneity, because it loves to attack the work that we're just starting out on, and it wants us to stop moving forward. Your inner critic criticizes no matter what. For example, if you don't go to the gym, it says, "You're not very serious about exercising." But when you do go to the gym, it says, "You're not very good at this. You should have just stayed home." The hallmark of your inner critic is that it criticizes no matter what we do. It criticizes if we do it, it criticizes if we don't. And we all know this voice of the inner critic. We're afraid of it. It has way too much power. You see, your inner critic is born from our childhoods, and it was designed to really keep us out of trouble and to prevent us from making mistakes over and over again. But what it does is it says, "Hey, remember that mistake you made? Let's play that movie over and over and over again." And we start to think that we're defective or there's something wrong with us. We don't realize it's just this negative criticism playing in this loop, and no one can thrive under this attacking pattern. So we need to allow our inner critic to survive, but we need to not allow it to thrive. I mean, imagine if you were walking through the grocery store and you heard a mother speaking to their child in the way that you speak to yourself, using words like idiot or hopeless or fat. You would automatically realize these are really negative ways of speaking and very detrimental. But we don't recognize it when we're speaking that way to ourselves. So we need to face our inner critic. We need to take away the power, look her in the eye, and say, this does not mean anything to us. Because the inner critic is not steeped in truth, and it is not part of realistic thinking. It is simply a single voice among many. It just happens to be one of the loudest ones. So let's talk about a few ways that we can quiet this inner critic. I've got 5 for you. So the first way to quiet that inner critic is don't argue with it. It's a losing battle. Don't engage in it fully. It's based in fear, and therefore it's not based in rational thinking, and it's not going to fight with you in a rational way. You have to develop skills to really recognize this voice and to manage this inner critic. And that can sometimes start with naming it. Now, some people like to give it a real name. And that might seem silly to you, but that works for a lot of people. If it does feel silly, just give it the name inner critic. But actively notice when this voice is chiming in, and especially when it's chiming in really loudly, like it likes to do. Now, this does take time. We've gotten so used to hearing this inner critic that we sometimes just take it for granted. But when you give it a name, it can make a difference. Now, in the comments below, I would love for you to tell me, would you give your inner critic a name? And if you would, what would you name it? The second way to quiet your inner critic is to learn to question it. Quiet it down, learning to question that voice in your head. You need to begin to understand the difference between your inner critic and the realistic voice. Now, your inner critic thinks very much in black or white, right or wrong, yes or no, while realistic voice thinks in shades of gray. And the two voices may be saying something very similar, but it will sound very different. Your inner critic is repetitive. There's no way this is going to work. There's no way this is going to work. There's no way this is going to work, right? And it's also very nagging and uses a berating tone. While your realistic voice looks at clues. It decides, yes, this will work, or yeah, I don't know, maybe we need to redirect and figure something else out. It will try to address the issues instead of deciding whether it's black or white. And it speaks in a much, much kinder tone. So you have to ask yourself, why our safety instinct wouldn't want us to actually do this thing we're thinking about. That can help you build awareness on who's speaking in your head. The third way to quiet your inner critic is to review your mistakes and then move on. We don't want to allow that inner critic to take hold of that remote control in our head and play that loop of this movie over and over again of what we've done wrong. That's simply allowing us to nitpick ourselves. So we only need to review our past mistakes once or twice, learn from them, and move on. The Buddha was very clear that giving energy to negative thoughts like this really can be detrimental. And he divided thoughts into two classes, those leading towards enlightenment and those that led away. When you allow your inner critic to have control, you're giving it strength, you're giving it power. So taking away this mental energy weakens it significantly. And when you start giving that inner critic less energy, it starts to weaken and go away. And that's really what we're looking for. The fourth way to quiet your inner critic is to change your relationship with praise. Now, I know this seems very counterintuitive. It seems like, don't I want to praise myself? But I want you to look at how you feel about praise. If you're a high achiever, you might be used to the gold stars and the high reviews. You might be used to working with clients who are wowed by what you do. But we can get addicted to this praise, and we can become reliant on this and allowing it to fulfill us and define us. And when we find ourselves in that loop, we can be afraid of moving on. We get afraid of what our inner critic is going to say to us. So it stops us from innovating. It stops us from trying new things, from going after that new job, because we're in this loop of wanting and craving more praise. So think about how you feel about praise and maybe see about switching that relationship up a little bit. The fifth way to quiet our inner critic is to be present. Become still and present. The inner critic loses traction when we do that because it feeds on the past and the mistakes we've made and the fears of the future. We want to really enjoy everything as it is right now in the moment. So let the voices of your inner critic come and go. You can acknowledge them and you can even say, thank you for your input, but I don't really need it, and move along. Because here's the thing, your inner critic loves to ruin the show. It will never be quiet. But if you can acknowledge it and really focus in the present on what you're enjoying and what you really want to do, it really does lose its power over you. And I think that's really important. So that's 5 ways that you can quiet your inner critic. I'd love for you to like this video if you found this information helpful. Don't forget to comment on what you would name your inner critic if you were to give it a name. And also, hit the subscribe button because I have a new video every Tuesday for you. If you'd like more information on fear of commitment or self-doubt, I have an entire podcast episode, episode 75, dedicated just to that. I have several blog posts that I'll also link to down at the bottom in the description. All right, until next time, have a beautiful and productive week.